Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going over every single fantasy and sci-fi book that I want to read. They're all on my TBR list, they are all on my radar right now. And the reason I'm doing this video is because I have been stressing out recently because I have so many books on my TBR list and I haven't written them down, and I do worry that I'm going to start forgetting books as I learn new books that I want to read. So the purpose of this video is really to write down all the books that I want to read in the fantasy sci-fi genre. These are all the books that I'm currently tracking. Some of the books I know a lot about, some of the books I know nothing about. And usually in a TBR video, I would bring up the book synopsis if I didn't know anything about it. But I thought in this video it would be interesting to just tell you the things that I know about the books that I know nothing about, and why I think I would like to read them. Hopefully maybe you will find some books that you'll want to read on this list. And if you have any suggestions for books, I would love to take them on board. If I list down any books that you think are great, let me know. If I list any books that you think are terrible, also please let me know so I know not to waste my time, because as you'll see, there is over 100 books on this TBR list. So let's just jump straight into it with number one is The Lord of the Rings. Now, obviously, The Lord of the Rings doesn't really need that much explanation. We all know The Lord of the Rings. It's been around forever. It is the GOAT when it comes to fantasy. Authors all around the world credit it as a great source of inspiration for their works. And I do feel a little pang of guilt that I am a fantasy lover and I have not dedicated my time to reading these books yet. And I've actually owned 3 different copies of them. So in my lifetime, I've owned 3 different copies of all the Lord of the Rings books, and I haven't read them once. This also includes The Hobbit as well. I want to read all the Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Next is all the books in the Grishaverse. I have just finished Shadow and Bone. I'll have a review for that coming up soon. And if you're unaware, Netflix just did the adaptation from the books to the TV series. And at the time, I didn't realize it, but that adaptation also includes stories from the Six of Crows. So I'm looking to finish the rest of the Grisha series and start the Six of Crows, and I believe the sequel to that is the Crooked Kingdom. I don't really know too much about Six of Crows. All I know is that it is like a heist story, and I always thought that it was set in a fantasy world, so I never really put that much bearing on it. I never really thought it would be that great. But if it's set in the same world that Shadow and Bone is set into, then I think I will really enjoy it, because my favorite thing about Shadow and Bone was the setting. Was, Russia in that time period, somewhere between the invention of primitive guns and World War I, and like the Shadowfold and all that. I thought the setting to Shadow and Bone was really interesting, and if Six of Crows is set in that same time period, in that same place, I have a feeling I'm actually going to really enjoy it, because from what I've heard, it's also a little bit more adult. It's a bit more YA to adult instead of early YA, which is what the Grisha books are. The next book is The Kings of the Wild. Now, I don't know too much about this book. I know it's about a group of old mercenaries that have retired. So they were the greatest band of mercenaries in their time, but then they all retired. But one of the main character's daughter gets kidnapped, or she's in some way indisposed. And so this guy rejoins the group back together to go and save his daughter. As far as I'm aware, don't quote me on that. That's what I've heard about the book. But the thing that really sells me on this book is that I'm a very character-motivated reader. I like books that have really great character work. Say, for example, Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. Fantastic book. If you haven't read that one, go read it. And apparently, the character work in Kings of the Wild is awesome. Apparently, it feels like a really good friendship, and it feels like a group of old friends playing a D&D campaign. So I have a feeling that I am going to really enjoy it. And that has a sequel called Bloody Rose, I believe. Maybe, maybe not. Don't quote me on it. Next book is the Nevernight series. Now, Nevernight is one of those books that is really, really divisive. People either love it or people hate it. I don't know too much about it. I'm pretty sure it's about the main character follows a girl at an assassin school, and she probably has to do some assassination stuff. But apparently it is incredibly flowery, and some people love that, some people hate that. And another issue is in the margins, there are notes. And some people hate that, some people love that, because they say it takes you out of the story to read the notes in the margin. So I think I would be really interested to find out where I fall on that fence, whether I love it or whether I hate it. Tea break. Next book is Ready Player 2. Now, I have already read Ready Player 2, but I read it at the beginning of when I started to do this BookTube channel, and I feel as if I did not do the review justice, because I was quite, what I would say, emotional and irrational in the review. I just said it's the worst book I've ever read, which it is the worst book I've ever read, but I didn't really give examples and I didn't really go into it and explain why I felt the way that I felt. So I'd like to reread Ready Player 2 and give like actual quotes from the books and give better examples and really develop why I didn't like that book. Because it's one thing to say that, you know, I hate this book and it is the worst book I've ever read, but it's another thing to give constructive criticism and feedback as to why the book was bad. Also, I just finished Ready Player 1 maybe about a week ago. I did a review for that, and I really enjoyed Ready Player 1. And I reread it because I hated Ready Player 2 so much. I was like, am I just older now? Is Ready Player 1 nowhere near as good as I remember? But I just read Ready Player 1, and I'd like to do a comparison between Ready Player 1 and Ready Player 2, and why one of them worked and the other didn't. Next on my list is Prince of Thorns. Now, I actually read Prince of Thorns when I was close to about 16 years old, and it was one of the first books that I ever read. So when I read it, it did a really good job, you know, the fact that it was so, what could I say, brutal and fast-paced and just kind of like destructive for a young boy that was really engaging and interesting. The issue, however, was because it was one of the first books I ever read, I missed so much information. Like, if you've read Prince of Thorns, you would know that there is a certain twist in the world. But I didn't get that until the end of book 2. I didn't know there was a twist and I didn't understand it until the very end of book 2. So I would like to go back and reread it as an adult, as somebody that really loves books, as a book reviewer, as an author myself. I'd really like to go back and re-experience that book and pick up all the things that I missed and go into it knowing the twist in the world. And after that one, I would like to read Prince of Fools, which is by the same author. It's just set in the same world, but it's set in a completely different space. And I've actually read the first book, but I did it when I was, like I said, quite young. And I didn't really understand that one either. But I remember the friendship between the prince and the like Viking that the prince travels with. I remember them being quite opposite people and their relationship being quite like funny. I remember it being a lot more humorous than Prince of Thorns. Whew, guys, if you hear a little shiver in my voice, it is because it is actually really cold out here. I did not expect it to be so cold, otherwise I would have dressed better. I am an Australian that lived in tropical paradise, plus 30, blue skies every single day, and I've just moved to Canada and I'm still trying to figure out how to dress for the cold. Should have worn gloves. What a flippin' idiot. Or as Hermione would say, what an idiot. Anyway, the next book on the list is Throne of Glass. Now, I have already read Throne of Glass when I was younger. You'll see that kind of common theme happening. And I remember actually enjoying Throne of Glass. I remember thinking that the first book was pretty good. I remember liking the idea of this like best assassin ever, but I remember hating the like love triangle-y stuff that was happening. And then I read Crown of Midnight, which is the second one, and I don't really remember a lot about that one. But I thought with just how prolific and beloved Sarah J. Maas is, I figured that I did like Throne of Glass. I may as well give it another go and try and read that series again. And at least just finish it. Also, my wife wants to read it, so we got to buy it anyway, so I may as well give it a read. The next book on the list is The Grey Sister by Mark Lawrence. Now, I don't actually know too much about this book. I think it's about young girls go to like a nun's convent to learn how to be assassins, so they're like assassin magic nuns or something. I don't know too much about the book, but it is very highly rated and it's by an author that I quite enjoy his work, so I am definitely wanting to give it a go. Also, I've read the first like page, I believe, and it has a like the very first line in the book is one of those lines that will hook you as a reader. So if you have this on your shelf and you haven't looked at it yet, go and read the first like paragraph. It's a good one. The next book on the list is Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson, both Mistborn 1 and Mistborn Era 2. Now, Mistborn I don't know too much about, and I do that on purpose because I've been wanting to read this for a long time and I really don't want to spoil it for myself. But from what I have heard, Mistborn Era 1 is a story set in a world where the Dark Lord has won, right? There's a lot of fantasy stories where the good guys go and kill a Dark Lord and save the world. In this, the story happens in a world where the good guys went to go and kill the Dark Lord, but the Dark Lord won. And after that like final battle or whatever, this story takes place 1,000 years in the future. And I hear that it's one of Brandon Sanderson's best works, which I have not had a lot of experience with Brandon Sanderson's books, but I have read Skyward, which was one of my favorite books. I really enjoyed that, and apparently Mistborn is going to be better than that, which to me is surprising because I really enjoyed Skyward. What else I know about it is that there is a magic system where they have to eat metal or something, and when they eat metal, they get granted special powers or something. I don't know, I'm not 100% sure. And apparently Mistborn Era 2, it's set a little bit more in the future. It's set in like a cowboy time or like a Wild West, and apparently it's like Wild West with magic, which sounds really cool to me as well. So I'm definitely going to give the Mistborn books a try. Now the next book on the list is the Wheel of Time series. Now I have purposely kept myself as in the dark with this as possible, so I know nothing Jon Snow about the Wheel of Time series. All I know about it is that the author passed away and Brandon Sanderson came and finished the last couple of books. So yeah, I've been trying to keep myself in the dark with that series as much as possible, but I am really looking at trying to start an epic series, like, say, The Wheel of Time, for example, and that looks like it is the front runner. That looks like it is the one that people recommend the most. So I might be starting that very soon, and I'm really excited to do it. It's 14 books long as far as I'm aware, and I am ready for this journey. The next book is the Scythe series. Now, as far as I'm aware with the Scythe series, it is set in a futuristic time where humans have conquered death. But because humans have conquered death and they still reproduce, there needs to be some way of controlling the population. So there is a special group of people called Scythes, and they are legally allowed to like kill people to keep the population under control. That's all that I'm aware of. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but it sounds like a very interesting premise, and it sounds like something that I want to give a go, and it gets a lot of high praise. Continuing on with the idea of reading epic series, I have Discworld. Now, Discworld I do not know too much about, but apparently, from what I hear, it is meant to be a bit more light-hearted fantasy. It's meant to be a bit more of like a fun adventure, not so much like people dying and killing each other and all that craziness. So yeah, it's just meant to be a much more of a fun ride with these characters. Which honestly, I mean, a lot of fantasy is so dark and like grim. I really wouldn't mind going into something like Discworld, where I hear that it's meant to be a bit more fun. Next we have Wizard's First Rule, or the, what is it, Sword of Truth series, I believe it's called? I'm not sure, but it's Wizard's First Rule, I believe is the first book in this series. Now, I hear so much about this book. I hear so much about the series, I hear so much about the book, and I hear so much about the author. There is so much drama attached to this series. People either love it or people hate it. And if you jump on Goodreads, the Goodreads score for this book is like 4.4 stars or something. So definitely a lot more people love it than hate it, but I hear so much more about people hating it, and if you go and you read the 1-star reviews, they're actually really interesting. And they're actually quite funny. But this book was actually recommended to me by a friend of mine named Ben. Shout out to Ben if you're watching. I know that you're probably not, but thanks for the suggestion anyway. So I really want to read it. I really want to see which side of the fence I fall on, whether I love it or whether I hate it. My only issue is that it is like 850 pages long, I believe. And that is a lot of page time to a book that I could very well hate. But it's a risk that I am willing to take. The next series is Dune. Now, I have not read anything about Dune, and I've not seen the movies, but I hear that Dune is one of those quintessential classic sci-fi stories that everyone should read. And much like a lot of the other books on this series, some people love it, some people hate it. Some people think it's the greatest, some people think it's so overrated. And I want to see where I fall on that fence. Next, we have Harry Potter. Now, Harry Potter needs no explanation. We all know Harry Potter. We've all seen the movies. If you haven't read the books, you should read the books. I read them when I was a kid, and I remember liking it. And it's one of those series that I've been wanting to reread as an adult, just to kind of capture that magic, and just to see if it really holds up with time. Because my wife and I watch the movies quite a bit, because if we don't know what to watch and we peruse Netflix for half an hour, we'll just be like, look, let's just throw on a Harry Potter movie. So I would like to go and reread them, but it's not going to be high on my TBR list because I've already read them. Next we have I Am Legend. Now, if you have not read the book I Am Legend, it is completely different to the movie, and it is significantly better in my opinion. And I say that, and I have already read this book, but this book is only about 100 pages long. I don't remember the exact page count, but it is only 100 pages long, and it changed the way I read books. Because while I was reading it, I actually thought it was really boring. I actually did not like the book. Oh, there's a squirrel. Squirrel! Anyway, I actually did not like this book at all. I thought it was boring. I thought it dragged on. I thought the pacing was really bad. I thought the guy didn't do enough cool stuff to make it interesting. But I was young and I didn't really enjoy the scientific aspects of it. But now that I'm a bit older, I have a feeling that I would enjoy the scientific aspects of it. But anyway, the way that this book changed the way I read is that I was so close to DNFing it. But because it was only 100 pages long, I decided I would just power through and just read it to the end. The ending of the book is so good and it's so great at recontextualizing the whole story that it changed the way that I read books. I now finish a book, I do not DNF books anymore because of I Am Legend, because if a book has a great ending like I Am Legend does, then it makes the rest of the book and all that slog and hard and pain worth it. So definitely read I Am Legend. It will probably change the way you read books. Next we have Shadow of What Was Lost. Now, I actually know nothing about this story, and I have seen no reviews for it either, but I thought it looked really cool, and apparently from like the very little that I know about it is an adventure story with a group of travelers together. And I like those kinds of stories, so I thought I would give this one a go. I know nothing about it, it's just on my TBR list. Next we have the Poppy War series. Now, I did just recently finish the Poppy War, and I didn't like it. I thought it wasn't that good, and I thought it didn't live up to the hype. I thought that the setting was really interesting, but besides the setting, the rest of it just wasn't great. But I would like to go back and reread it, because this book is so beloved and it's getting like an animated TV show as far as I'm aware. Don't quote me on that, but as far as I'm aware, it is getting some kind of an animated adaptation, and it is on like everyone's 10 best fantasies of all time kind of thing. It's one of those books that is considered really, really great, but I personally just think it's considered really, really great because of the setting. People are sick of the European setting, and the fact that it's set in ancient China makes it interesting. I think that's why it gets so much hype, but I would like to go back, revisit the series, and see if I can find something that I love. Next, we have another book by Brandon Sanderson, Warbreaker. Now, I actually don't know anything about this book. I know that it is one of his few standalone books, and apparently it is meant to be a bit more light-hearted. It's not so much action-packed, it's a bit more light-hearted and fun. So I really want to give that one a go. Then we have Song of Achilles. Now, I loved Greek mythology when I was a kid. I used to read the stories. I used to play like the video games. I thought Greek mythology was so cool. So Song of Achilles does sound like something that would be right up my alley. I'm a bit apprehensive to try it though. If you have read Song of Achilles, let me know what it's about. Let me know if it's any good. Same with Circe. Circe is obviously in the same vein. It's all Greek mythology. Let me know if you have read it. Is it good? Does it live up to the hype? I hear it like nothing really happens. It's just about a woman that walks around her island and it's actually kind of boring. Just let me know. Next, we have the entire Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson, which I believe is only 4 books right now, but I believe it's meant to go up to 10 or 14. I don't really remember the number. But yeah, it's Brandon Sanderson's attempt at an epic, and apparently it's meant to be really, really great. And like I've said, I already enjoy Brandon Sanderson's work, so I am very much willing to give him a go. The next book on the list is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. Now, I have purposely not read this book. This is meant to be one of the greatest modern fantasy stories ever told, not set in a modern time, but written in a modern time. But the issue is that people have been waiting for his third and final book for the last 10 years. And I actually knew 10 years ago that he was going to take ages to release his book. So I specifically didn't read the first book because I knew that it would be a long wait. So I'm going to read the series as soon as he announces book 3, as soon as they have a cemented date for book 3. I'm going to drop all of my other TBR books and start The Name of the Wind. This book is another one of those controversial ones where people love it, people hate it, people think it's overrated, people think it's the greatest thing in the world, and I am excited to find out where I fall on the fence. Next we have Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones needs no introduction, needs no explanation. But much like The Name of the Wind, I'm not going to read Game of Thrones until we know what's going to happen with this series, because George R.R. Martin has said that if he passes away, he's not going to let anyone else finish the series for him. So I figured that I would not read it until I know what the last book ends like. You know what I mean? Because if he finishes, say, on the second last book, and it ends on this dramatic, massive cliffhanger, I don't want to have to read 6 or 7 or 8 books just to never find out the solution or the answer to these questions I had. Next on the list is The Way of Shadows. This is another book that I read when I was quite young. It was actually one of the first series that I ever read, and it was what really got me into reading. It's about an orphan kid that becomes a super magical assassin, and then some dramatic stuff happens in the world. I want to reread it as an adult because I've heard that there's a lot of criticism with this book, but I remember loving it as a child. So it's one of those things that I would want to reread with an adult lens and see how much my opinion of it changes. And on the same vein as Brent Weeks, we go into The Lightbringer. I don't really know anything about The Lightbringer. I know that magic comes from light. I know that because white light has a bunch of different colored magic in it, and different shades of the white light or different shades of light can do different things in forms of magic, and there's a guy called the Prism that can control all the shades of light, magic, whatever. I don't know. That's a really bad explanation, I'm sorry. But I hear it's really great, so I want to give that one a go as well. Man, this sun is just crazy. I just suddenly got a crazy glow about me. Next we have The Lies of Locke Lamora. I don't know too much about this one, but from what I can tell, it follows a group of thieves that their god is the god of thievery or something, and stealing is the way that they praise their god. But besides that, I don't really know anything more about it. But it is one of those beloved books on BookTube, so I figured I'd give it a go. Next we have all of Joe Abercrombie's books. He is meant to be the king of writing grimdark, and his books are meant to just be so amazing, and his character work is meant to be amazing. Apparently, if you are a plot-driven reader, then these books aren't for you. Apparently, these books are a bit meandering, and they're all about the character. But character is what I love, so I am all down for that. Then we have The Hunger Games, which needs no introduction. Percy Jackson, Divergent, they don't need any introduction either. Then we have everything by Robin Hobb. I actually know nothing about Robin Hobb or any of her works, but I know that they are meant to be very highly regarded, so I want to give them a red hot go. And pretty much everything by Stephen King. I've only ever read one book of his. I've read The Shining, which was one of my favorite stories. The Shining is such a good book. And yeah, basically I powered through those last books. That is my TBR. That is everything that I'm tracking in regards to fantasy and sci-fi. I've got a lot of books I got to get through. If you know any other books that I should have on this list, please let me know. If you think any of these books are terrible, please let me know. If you think any of these books should be at the top of my list because they're great, please let me know. Also, like this video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and as always, thank you very much.